Signora, ja, daar's hy. Thank you. First of all, acknowledgement. Without the help of people providing me with pictures, conversations, motivation, newspaper items, etc., I could not do this, and of course, then I would not have been here. So there is my list of people who helped and assisted, and you will see that there are a lot of van der Merwes, people living or used to live in Bethlehem. There in 1929, General Smuts wrote the following. He said, "Wars pass, but the human soul endures. The interest is not so much in the war, but the human experience behind that." And that for me is my departing point here for my presentation. So I want to tell you about a family that lived 125 years, or close to 125 years ago. It is a story of the heritage of the van der Merwes, who lived on the farm Aasvogelkrans. Now, you can either say Aasvogelkrans or you can say Aasvogelkrans, but it used to be Aasvogelkrans. And I took the picture last week when I was in Bethlehem to do some research. That is Aasvogelkrans. It is a sandstone outcrop on the southern part of Langberg. Langberg is to the eastern side of Bethlehem. And the farm is located there. I was lucky because it was starting to rain, and just at the right moment, the sun was shining on Aasvogelkrans, and I could take the picture. But then also, there is, let me just get this thing there. There, yes, there are some trees there, and you can just see the trees. And that is where the house, Aasvogelkrans house, used to be. Here in the foreground, you will see other trees. It is a farm, and I was standing on the road between Bethlehem and Harrismith, taking this picture. And it looked all very beautiful and very peaceful. Now, my story could have happened on any other farm. It is not necessarily Aasvogelkrans. And I want to start with the question of who are the van der Merwes? And there you see them. These van der Merwes, there are 5 van der Merwe males, and then the auntie there on the right-hand side. And they were the children, the 6 survivors of Christian Pieter van der Merwe. And Christian Pieter lived on Aasvogelkrans. Important here is that the picture was taken in January 1926. And there you see them. The 6 survivors, as I call them, were all 7th generation of van der Merwes in South Africa. They were born between 1835 and 1863. Now, some of them were part of the Great Trek. They all lived through the Anglo-Boer War because the picture was taken in 1926, and that was long after the war. And there they are. I introduce you to this one, Johannes Willem. In short, he was called Sias, and he lived on the farm Drakensberg. The next one is in the back, Frederik Johannes. He was known as Frikkie, and he was from the farm Parel. I put a note there for myself. Frederik Johannes was my great-grandfather. And that's where I fit into the picture. And then there was also Willem Karel. He lived in Aasvogelkrans. We knew him as WK, or Billy. And they came from Wagenmakersvallei in the Cape. They moved to Graafrenet. They lived in a farm there called Vlakplaas. It was close to the Sneeuwberge, the snow mountains, at Graafrenet. And then, in September 1836, they decided to move away to join the Maritztrek on their way to Natal, to Pietermaritzburg. So they left Graafrenet, and they were then voortrekkers. In green, you can see where the Maritz track started. It was there at Graafreinet, and the end destination was then in Natal. Also, the Retief track went in the same direction. But Willem Karel and his son Christian de Pieter decided to return to the Orange Free State. And I think the main reason for that was the fact that the Republic of Natalia was proclaimed a British colony. That was in May 1843. And I think that was the one biggest reason why they decided to go back to the Free State. And once they're in the Free State, they settled where Bethlehem is today. Of course, Bethlehem was not there then because Bethlehem was only established in 1816. And this is Christian Pieter. He was born in 1814, as I already said, but he traded a wagon and a team of oxen for the farm called Aasvogelkrans. So therefore, he became the first van the Merwes to own Aasvogelkrans. Previously, the farm belonged to Christian Pieter's brother-in-law, Mr. Heidenreich. So he actually bought it from them. But it was a huge farm. It was 4,500 morgen. It was really big. Just imagine now that today, if I can trade my Volkswagen for a farm of this size, oh, I would be so happy. He married a lady called Martha Elizabeth Maria Hatang, and she was very closely related to Piet Retief, one of the leaders of the Great Track. And there we see them on this picture. It wasn't at the marriage, of course, it was much, much later than when this picture was taken. He had 3 near-to-death escapes. The first one was at the Battle of Vegelaar, 1838, and then there was Bloedrivier, 1838 again, and also the Battle of Congela, 1842. Now that was during the time when he was still living in Natal. At Vegelaar, he was in a donga with his horse, surrounded by Zulu warriors, and the horse was injured. It couldn't get out of the donga and he was stuck there. Luckily, he survived. At Bloedrivier, he was hurt in his left hand. He had a spear wound in his left hand. And then Congela, already I said, that was against the British soldiers, where he was stabbed with a bayonet in the hip. But he was also a lion hunter, 67 lions in total. Later in his life, he was almost killed by a lion, very close to Aasvogelkrans. He surveyed Pietermaritzburg and also Bethlehem, 1860, with what we call harde rouriemen, that is a cowhide. Now what they do is they take the cowhide and they cut it into a very thin strip. This is then stretched out in the sun and dried. And then it was neatly measured, carefully measured out by a folding rule. And that's what they used to measure out a town. 1862, he was an elder of Harry Smith. And 1869, he was co-founder and elder of the Dutch Reformed Church in Bethlehem. Of course, then, the church was established 9 years after Bethlehem was established. Later in his life, his beloved farm Aasvogelkrans was divided into smaller pieces. Let me see if I can show it to you here. Yes, there is Franshoek, the top part. Then there is Parel. There is a place called Narva. And then there's Dragonsteen. And this part that remained was called the Restant of Aasvogelkrans. These places were named after Dragonsteen, Parel, and Franshoek in the Cape, where they came from. Right at the bottom, there's a bottom there, is a date, and this one says December 1878. There are also signatures, there are stamps, so this is a legal surveyor's document saying that this was their farm. So later on, the parts and the pieces became the property of his sons, or some of his sons. He died when he was 79, and he was buried there on his farm, Aasvogelkrans. On the left hand, we see the grave of Oma Martha, and on the right hand side, we see the grave of Christian Pieter. These graves are in the family cemetery on Aasvogelkrans. Christian Pieter became the inspiration of many of the van der Merwes in the Eastern Free State. He was of the 6th generation in South Africa. He was a descendant of Skalk and Anna. They lived on a farm called the Whip. That was the first van der Merwe family in South Africa. And the picture was taken, I think, very much towards the end of his life when he was already an old man. Let me quickly look at Bethlehem, established during 1860, and the word Bethlehem refers to a word that means house of bread. Historically significant, yes, because after Bloemfontein was captured, Bethlehem temporarily became the capital of the Orange Free State. In terms of strategic importance, the location of Bethlehem was such that it made it a key point for British operations to control the region as well as to pursue some of the Boer commandos. Then, after 2 days of battling, on the 7th of July 1900, Bethlehem was captured by the British. The town was defended by more than 6,000 Boers under the command of General Christian de Wet. On the other side, around about 25,000 soldiers in and around Bethlehem at that same time. But on the right-hand side, the picture I have there shows what Bethlehem looked like immediately after the Anglo-Boer War. If you think that this was 40 years after it was established, and now it is totally destroyed and there was just nothing left of Bethlehem, it is really, really sad. What happened on Aasvogelkrans? During the war, Willem Karel, who was then living on the farm, he was the son of Christian Pieter, and he was also a farmer, but he was not only a farmer, he was also a blacksmith. He had a doors machine, as we call this, and a steam engine. Now, on the right-hand side, this one here, is a picture which I got out of our family album. It shows a steam engine on the left-hand side, this one here, and then here is the doors machine. This picture is a picture of the machines that my grandfather had while he was farming. And the steam engine on the left-hand side produced the steam, and in this case, it was bell-driven. There was a pulley there, and the pulley was connected to the steam engine by means of a belt. So it was difficult to set it up, and it had to be aligned very, very carefully. But the doors machine itself was made of wood, although it had huge iron wheels. Still, it was difficult to line it up and difficult to use it. So during the war, the machines on Aasvogelkrans were burnt and destroyed. The house on Aasvogelkrans also did not escape the scorched earth policy. The soldiers carried grass in straw into the house to provide more material for setting this house on fire. The schoolroom was also burned down. Stable, not burned down, and the family could live in the stable until the war was over. Right inside, I have this picture, the house on Aasvogelkrans, and you can see there, this was carved out. It says WVDM, that is for Willie van der Merwe, and the date there is 1894. Yes, there it is. On the left-hand side is a picture of a bullet that was lodged into the wall there during the war. The remains on Aasvogelkrans of the building there, but what I want to point out to you is this. There is a eucalyptus tree here There are also other trees on surrounding the house. I will mention the story about the tree just now. But there's also a little window. Now I need to show you the window. Let me just get the sinky there. I cannot get it there. The window's there right in the top of the gable, closest to us. And I will also speak about the window just now. Sad to see the house as it is now, 100 and something years after it was built. What about the children on the farm? During this war, Christian Pieter, he was the eldest son. He participated in the Anglo-Boer War when he was 16 years old. He served with General de Wet, and this is a picture of Christian Pieter taken much later in his life, around about, I think this was taken around 1942. Paul was 13 years old. Paul did not take part in the war. He broke his leg during the war. And during this time, the British soldiers tried to capture him. Once he hid under an overhanging rock, while two of the soldiers stood on top of this rock, just a few feet above him. He knew that they were there, but they didn't know about him. So the one said, I will catch him. However, they didn't succeed in catching him. He was just too clever. Lina was a young girl. She was around 13 years old. But she was the eldest daughter. That's why she had to look after the family. And then when the English arrived there, she was baking bread. So quickly she pushed the dish under the table, covered it with a cloth, tried to protect it. And then the house was burned down. Afterwards, she recovered the dish from the ashes, and she found that the bread was risen and baked. She was a courageous young girl. She also tried, and she succeeded in getting a bag of salt from the house before it was burned down. That's Lina. Then Billy. Billy was 10 years old, and he had to look after the horses, weak and sick horses, left by the Boers during the war. And he was looking after these horses. He cared for them. There was a Aasvogelkrans, a hollow in the mountain, a secret place where he kept those horses because he couldn't allow these horses to go back to the English. And the horses were there until they were healed enough and could be used again by the soldiers. And then Wessel. Wessel was only 9 years old. He could not tell much about the war because he was still too small. But Wessel never married. And he lived in the farm, looking after his parents until they died. Today, Wessel is also buried on the farm. Dewald, only 3 years old. He witnessed how the family's home was burning down. The children sat outside against the trees. I showed you the trees on the picture. And watched the flames as it was coming out of the small little window on the gable. I also showed you that little window there. This is Dewald. Just imagine the trauma for a 3-year-old kid to see how your house is burned down, and you can do nothing about it. Now, after the war, Willem Karel had to earn a living. He had to look after his family. So he continued with his blacksmith business. Everything on the farm was destroyed, and there was nothing. There was no house, there were no implements, there were no cattle, no nothing. His son, Christian Pieter, assisted the father in the blacksmith shop. But Christian Pieter had to save money because he wanted to finance his studies at the University of Leiden in Holland. There, he graduated as an advocate with a doctor's degree in Roman Dutch law. Good for him. But while he was in Holland, he bought a sideboard, and there's a picture of this sideboard. It is a beautiful piece of furniture. I really like that piece of furniture. And today, it is still there in Bethlehem. It is in the house of Nicolien Dorfling. I will speak about Nicolien just now. Before the war, there was a roller mill in Bethlehem on Drakenstein. And during the war, it was destroyed by the English. They used cannon fire to destroy this. So after the war, you see us Willem build a new mill in Bethlehem. And that was called the Drakenstein Roller Mill. And there we can see the picture of this mill on the right-hand side. It is a beautiful building, still in a very good condition. We can see the building still stands there today. But the story I want to tell you is this. Sorry? Donkey. The story I want to tell you is this. My grandfather, who was a Christian Peter, started to work in this mill after he left school. And then many years after that, my brother, who is also Christian Peter, after school started to work at this roller mill. But of course, they were a number of years apart to work there at this mill. Charles Petrus inherited Drakenstein. We called him Oom Charlie. And because the war resulted in the house being destroyed or partially destroyed by a cannon, there was a new house required. And Charlie built a new house. And there we see on the right-hand side the picture of the new house. The new house was built in exactly the same place where the old farmhouse was. This was a magnificent house. Just imagine 6 bedrooms, 2 kitchens, and a lot of other rooms in this beautiful house there. And it was built out of sandstone. This picture taken in 1952 shows the setup on the farm there. Just get this one. Yes, there it is. There's the house. You can see the house there. In front of the house, a beautiful garden. It was fenced in. There was a gate, both sides of the gate, 2 sandstone lions. There was the fruit trees. There was a shed here on this side. And then here, I think some outbuildings, and I think if I'm not wrong, the one with the brown roof is the one where the mill used to be. At this stage of the farm, you can see that there was also electrical supply, and there was also a telephone line going to the house. So quite modern and quite nice. So I started with the picture taken in 1926 of the 6 survivors, as I called them. During 2012, another photo was taken, but this time of the descendants of the 1926 survivors. This was 86 years after the first picture, and I call these people the young ones. So let us look at them. And there they are. My young ones. From the left-hand side, this is Tarina Kutsia. Then I have VK Delpoort. VK Delpoort is Willem Karel Delpoort. Then there's Paul van der Merwe, his wife Hantie. And then here is Nick van der Merwe, his wife Ingela standing next to him there. And Nick was the last person, the last male to live on Aasvogelkrans before he died. Then here we have Fransjo Nudea, and here we have Nico Dorfling. Now Nico is the grandson of Ingela. And Nico is also the son of the woman in Bethlehem who has that beautiful sideboard. But there they were. The one in the front is Aneta. She's got a black coat on her. I'm coming back to her. She is going to speak to us right now. I have 3 slides left. Can I just finish the 3? Thank you. Now, Aneta grew up on Drakenstein. She was the great-granddaughter of Josias Willem. And she has some remains of wheat coming from that roller mill. So I called her and I said, Aneta, please, can I have a picture? Can you send me a picture of this? Because I want to use it at my symposium presentation to show it to the audience. She took the picture, she sent it to me by email, and now I share the picture with you. On the right-hand side, the remains of this charred, burnt wheat. I quote from her, just a little bottle with burnt wheat. I took it out myself as a child, and I scraped it together many years later. So that is Aneta and her burnt wheat. Now I'm coming to my end, my last word. Our ancestors were simple but sincere. They were honorable people. They were soldiers, farmers, millers, blacksmiths, housewives, ordinary people. But God blessed them and their heritage in building a nation. And He blessed them. So, what is the purpose? Maybe we find the answer in the words of President Kruger. And this is, take from the past what is good and build your future on it. Thank you. Now I'm finished.